Welcome to Building Bigger Lives. Today, we are going to talk about productivity, some hacks, some ideas. What do we mean by productivity? And I am joined by my very informative coach, Michael Regan. Thanks so much for being here.
Good to see you
And
today,
let's
Kathryn.
let's make it a productive episode, huh?
That sounds like a plan. I think this is one that a lot of people will tune into, even if they have chosen this episode based on a search, because I think productivity hacks and tips and tricks end up in a lot of search engines. So let's make sure we cast a wide net, and I'm excited to dig into it with you.
Great. Yes. Okay, so let's kind of dig into it right now. What do we mean by productivity, and what does it look like for you?
So I think defining it is helpful, and I think if we look at the word product or production, we start to see what productivity is really rooted from in terms of its word. And so most of us today, living in a computerized world, we tend to use a lot of software systems as productivity systems. And then maybe some manual systems as well get woven in depending upon the work environment that we're in. So if I was to define productivity, it would be, our ability to create, because that's the production side, and to define some sort of system in which to repeat that creation. In other words, to put it into some sort of repeatable system that hopefully over time would become more effective and ultimately more efficient.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would add to that is how much can I get done in the hours that I have available? And is that through things like automation, which is a little bit of what I think you just brought up? But how can I increase my productivity? How much can I create or get done in the time allotted? So
Yeah,
that's
I like that. I like the practical nature of the way you just described that. And again, I think sometimes these technical definitions don't help us as much as the practical
Mhm.
ones. So thanks for bringing that in.
That's why we're both here. And so one of the things I think that every industry is focused on, and obviously like manufacturing, you think how many widgets can they get out? But in our business, it's more about serving the client and how can we make that more effective and spend more time in the spots that are the highest paying activities. But in order to do that, we have to focus on some of the low paying ones to figure out how to automate things, how to make it fast. So I think the question we always ask ourselves is how do high performance people get so much done in a day versus people who are kind of on the way? And what can we do to replicate that in our own business?
Yeah, it's very fair because you touched on a couple of topics there that I want to at least expand upon. It is true we can learn a lot from manufacturing models about how productivity works. The problem is that we're not manufacturing people. We have relationships with those people. So these aren't widgets; these are human beings, and that means we have to take some of that ideology and we have to run it through a filter in which we really remember that this is a people first business. So whether we're in the real estate sales side of the business or the financing side of the business, or we're one of our audience members who's a small business owner, and really their connection to real estate might be the lease they've signed to operate their business in. We have to be able to connect our productivity systems with people. So one of the most common systems that I think we all use is probably our email system. I know Outlook is maybe the world's most common email system. It also has a calendar function built into it. There's a task manager built into it. It has some functionality designed to create
Mhm.
a framework for productivity. And most people, I think, start there. So when you talk about high performance people, they're taking common systems like email and they're developing um, productivity hacks around how to manage that email system rather than let it manage them. And that is a beast for some of us, especially if we haven't been really disciplined about where we put our email address or how regularly we sign up for things or register for things. So I think I would start by saying most folks in the high performance category have taken a basic system like Outlook and they've created a flow to that system designed to create efficiencies. My favorite model for that was Getting Things Done, a book by David Allen that became a productivity system, GTD. And it designed a flow for all of those emails in order to properly either do them, delegate them, or delete them. I mean, ultimately, that was the system. If there was a get to it later, like that was the fourth category, then it was a filing system in order to properly get that out of your inbox and into another place. And of course, there are a lot of people, maybe you have a feeling on this, that like their inbox to be like a to-do list. That tends to be the demarcation between high performance people and highly overwhelmed people. If your inbox is your to-do list, it's kind of hard to get over that hump and really be high performance.
Oh, that's such good advice. And I think that those D's are important in everything that we do, not just email, but I think email is where so many people get stuck with productivity that it's huge. I think just some other practical things to throw in there is things like rules, auto delete, even auto forward templates. I think you can dig into email just in probably an entire episode, but I think that some of those things have saved me a little bit. Is what can I do to make this so I don't have to manually do it? It will do it itself. So I have when I went to Europe for 3 weeks, I had a folder called scan and then delete because there was
Mm.
so many emails that I would want to see, but I don't need to spend time on. And so then I could let that folder build up to 50 or 70 and then real quick, okay, good. That's done, that's done, that's done, and delete them all. And it's out of my life. So, but in order to do that, you have to spend the time setting those things up. But I think that can make a huge difference in just, hey, what else can I do to make this easier for me to review quickly?
I
Um,
like that a lot, Kathryn. And you, as you often do in these episodes, you touched on a subject that I think we should unpack. Let's make sure we do book an episode around email systems specifically, because I think you are 100%
Mhm.
right about that. As you said it out loud, that seems so obvious to me that that's something where that's like a universal platform that everyone has to figure out, how do I do this? And there's no right or wrong way. The beauty of some of these systems is, and I know you've created some of those just like you riffed on. Um, I can learn from those, and then I might modify them in a different way that then you get to relearn from, even though it was your idea in the first place. It's a lot like when I see musicians get into a studio and they start sharing
Mhm.
riffs and notes. It builds, and I think that happens a lot with something like email productivity. So excited to come back to that one. So let's help folks that maybe aren't ready to take a deep dive into email. Let's assume we're going to have a simple process for how to get started, how to sort things in a way that allows them to execute more efficiently. Is there a productivity system that has worked for you in that space? And I certainly have some thoughts on mine, but I'd love to
Mhm.
hear. Have when you're feeling like, okay, I've got to design my system, what's your process? Where do you usually start?
So it depends a little bit on what system, but I think of my day and we brought up before, I use one by noon. And that sometimes helps me just bring up what are the three most important things to get done today. And then, hey, I need to do what I can by noon as far as, hey, here's those three things. And then the other thing is just kind of sorting through. So I use Calendly for productivity as well because someone can just click it, make an appointment, but I can filter all those people into certain times of the day. So, for example, if it's a 45-minute initial client meeting, I'm going to have those as much as possible in the afternoon. And so my Calendly link only gives them afternoon choices. Okay. And so some of those things help just filter things to the right categories of my day so that because if I have client appointments the entire day, I will lose my mind because I just don't have that much capacity in my
Mm.
day and I'll never get back to people. So you really have to kind of think about when am I in a good spot to meet with clients? What should that time of the day be and what should I do it in the morning instead?
Got it. Okay, so you framed that in an interesting way. You took a couple examples of ways that you've taken a fundamental approach to that. You mentioned Win by Noon. Maybe some of our users know what that system is, created by our friend Todd Bookspan, and others may not have heard of that before, but it is a written physical journal. I should say written, you write in it. It's a published printed journal in which you holographically track every activity during your day based on what you had prepared and planned for either the prior day, the prior week, or the prior quarter. So there's a process to flow through this journal designed to first create and then track so that you can sort everything into those categories and then transfer them properly to the way that you're managing your day. So that's a great tip for folks that maybe haven't seen a productivity journal like Win by Noon. You mentioned Calendly. That's a great tool that interfaces with maybe your Outlook or whatever calendar system you have. One of the things that might be helpful for our audience, if they maybe aren't ready to buy a journal or download some software, is go to a whiteboard. Go to a whiteboard and let's draw a matrix with just, a 4-box matrix, just like we did in, business 101 classes. And with this matrix, this is referred to commonly as an Eisenhower matrix. We're going to separate into 4 categories what's in front of us to sort through the priority that we're going to attack our system with. And so I'll sometimes have a client focus on what is both urgent and important, and we'll put that in the first box. And we're going to separate that from what is urgent but not as important in the second box. We're going to separate that below within the matrix with what is really important but not as urgent from what is not as urgent and not as important. And that'll create a organization strategy for some of the things we have. So going back to your calendar or your email, for people that are feeling overwhelmed, like, I don't know how to even attack this, that sometimes is a super helpful tool. It doesn't solve anything. It just helps you sort everything. And once it's sorted, so much easier to see, oh, got it. That's what I should be doing. That's what I
Mhm.
should be delegating. That's what I should be maybe scheduling for later. And that's what I should be deleting. So that whole getting things done model I mentioned really becomes very easy to start using once you've sorted them into those 4 categories. And I hope for someone out there, that's a helpful visual for where to get started. And boy, if you need any help with that, that's my nerdy love language. I'd love to dig into it with you.
I love it. I would say like the scan and delete goes in like, not important, not urgent. I can look at it later just to give somebody an example. But I think that's a great breakdown because we know what the urgent things are that come up in our day. So putting them in that box can be like, you know what, this is the stuff that needs to be flagged in my inbox, or this is the stuff that I need to make sure I set time aside for every day. So it can really help create that ideal week. And I think that that's something that is so important. So really, once you start, how do you maintain that productivity? Is it creating that ideal week? But then how do you stay in that? That's so hard.
Yeah. So one of the productivity systems I'm really fond of is called the 4 disciplines of execution, which sounds really technical. But if you think about it, it really flows just like those 4 boxes into 4 main categories. And so it's an easy way to keep up with this once you've sorted things. You know, discipline number 1 in the system is get focused on really wildly important goals. And so these are the outcomes that really define what you're trying to measure. So on a daily basis, you could do this. On a weekly basis, you could do this, or monthly and quarterly, you could do this. But the system will flow either way. Once you've done that, you look at what are the lead measures. And you tipped off on one earlier. So I want to tie back to your great example with Win by Noon. Win by Noon is designed to get you to focus on your top 3 things for the day. And I think that's exactly what a lead measure is meant to imply, is what are the 3 most important things that if you take action on them today will drive that wildly important goal that you're trying to accomplish. The third is then creating some sort of visible scoreboard. So again, your journal is great because now you get to track against what you said was important. So that flows nicely into that third category of you've got to have a scoreboard. If we don't, it's like an athletic event. If we go to a football game and we're watching a football game and they're playing and everything's going just as we normally would expect, and suddenly the scoreboard goes out in the stadium, for a few minutes, we'll keep watching the game because we think we know where we are. Hey, is it third down or second down? I can't tell, like, how many yards to, like, we're a little confused, but we're following. Go past a few minutes without a scoreboard, and pretty soon it just looks like a bunch of people running around and hitting each other. And occasionally they indicate a celebration where we might know what to do, but we're a little bit lost. If that goes on past the quarter, we're checking out to the beer cart or the snack stand. And now this just becomes a social activity. We're no longer engaged with the game. There's a reason for that. It's the same reason why in our businesses we need a scoreboard. Everybody tells me, oh, yeah, no, I keep track of that up here. Oh, I know what's going on. And it's just like being in a stadium without a scoreboard. You think you do, but you're really foggy on it because all of our brains are capable of getting some of those details lost.
Yeah.
Where having that journaled out or posted somewhere where we see it really gives us the discipline to keep up what we did in that sorting. The fourth discipline is really simple. We have to have a cadence of accountability. You and I had a great podcast episode on accountability, so I won't unpack that one any further, other than once we have that cadence of accountability, we get to review the scorecard, we get to adjust those lead measures, and we ultimately get to accomplish our goals.
And I think let's go through and give a couple examples of a scorecard, maybe, just because I think it'll be different in businesses. But a scorecard could be, did you do your, how many workouts did you have for the week? How many calls did you make? How many loans did you close? How many past clients did you call? So I think just it can be whatever works for you in your life. It might be, did I take my kids on 5 walks? So it can be whatever fits into your world, but it is weird how you're like, gosh, I swear I did that this week. And then you're like, oh, I did that 2 weeks ago. What was I thinking? So just having those measurements. And then I think the power in that comes from when you start to see it over time and say, oh, that's why we're busy, is because our applications were way up or our calls were way up, and therefore 90 days later our volume went up. So just being able to track that over time is where the magic really happens with productivity, and that then makes you, I think, even more productive down the road.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And so if you're out there listening and thinking, all right, like Kathryn just riffed on a couple of examples, do I even want to play with one of those? How about the one you just mentioned? Too often I hear people focus on a lag measure for their goal without a lead measure to drive it. What
Mm.
does that mean? I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, well, that's a lag measure, meaning at some point in the future, you'll hop on a scale and you'll either be where you were, a little more, a little less. But that's the real question is, what are the activities you commit to drive the loss of that 10 pound? Those are the things you want to track in that scorecard. And the good news is today we all, I mean, I'm not wearing an Apple Watch, but a lot of people have these technology
Yeah.
tools right on their
Oh,
wrists, or a Fitbit tracker. It's synchronized often now to your phone. There you go. And once you have these tools, it's an awesome way to leverage those productivity hacks toward the wildly important goals that you've set, and keep you focused on those lead measures. Did you get your 10,000 steps in today?
right.
Did you, log the miles that you said, or whatever was the activity? And by the way, we're using physical activity as examples because I think everybody can relate to that.
Yeah.
But you're 100% right. This could be as simple as, if you're in real estate sales, how many outbound calls did you make? How many uh, CMAs did you put together? How many live meetings did you have with your past clients or with new prospects? Like, these become very simple lead measures that if you set at the beginning of the week and then scorecard at the end of the week, you can reset for the following week and really start to evaluate whether or not you need to turn up the volume a little in order to keep on track with your goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everybody can use that regardless of their business or what they're up to. So I always love hacks, right? Who doesn't love hacks? So let's talk through some common calendar hacks.
Mm.
What have you seen in your clients? What's been helpful?
So I guess I'll focus on, let's call them 3 Bs, just for the sake. I don't know if I want to brand it 3 Bs, but there are 3 Bs that I see often. The first is blocking. So time blocking is a super common approach, and some of us resist it because it just seems like, ugh, now I'm boxed in. I can't I can't breathe here. You're making me do things at specific times. But what you find when you embrace this, you realize, oh, this is why, all kinds of organizations that we depend on do the same thing. How would you like it if the flight you were going to take this week wasn't time blocked
Right.
and you just showed up at the airport and they may or may not get to you,
Yeah.
and we've had those, by the way, when you've had a delayed flight, look what that does to your anxiety level. All of a sudden,
Mhm.
now I'm running behind. Now I'm going to be late for the next thing. So let's just really, same thing. If you show up at your medical office for your doctor and, oh, the doctor's running a little behind today, and an hour later, you're still thinking, does this person even keep track of a time block? So if you're resistant to time blocking, just try to imagine how it feels to be on the other end of someone else's time block, and you'll realize how important it is because it creates structure and framework to your day. A second B that I see often is what I would call batching. And batching is where we take similar activities and we batch them together. It keeps us from scattering all over our day. A good example of this, if you were just trying to look for the most basic one, is if I'm recording video right now, my computer over here that controls my Outlook is off. I'm batching activities where I'll go video to video and then later move over here and process email messages and calendar. If I toggle back and forth between the two, it forces my brain to stress more because I'm not really able to get into a groove in its simplest language. So by batching activities together, if I'm going to be on video, I want to record video back to back until I've hit that apex of my energy level, then a little bit of a break, and then on to something else, which leads to that third B. Buffer is so important. We have to create or break, if you like that version of the B. If we don't create breaks throughout the day, we don't give our brains an opportunity to refresh. It's no different than the mechanics. Your computer every once in a while needs to be rebooted. Your car every
Mhm.
once in a while needs to be turned off and cooled down. These are normal things in life, and our bodies are no different than this, nor are our brains. So I think those are my favorite three B's. And once you've done some of those things, I think the other common one I see at some level would be called theme days. And theme days are a more macro version of blocking and batching around similar activities. So if your job requires you to be both the sales professional and the processing professional, simple language. I've got to find my business and then I've got to put my business into an actual process in which we can execute and close. If you're still managing both of those activities, sometimes it's good to be in a mode where, hey, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday are my sales days, and I'm highly focused on sales activities. I dress appropriately for it, I prepare appropriately for it, I get into that mode. And maybe Tuesday, Thursday are processing. Some of you might say, okay, I can't do them by the days, so I do them by the half days. Look, we could go on and on with these examples, but
Mhm.
that's a place that I see high performance people start. If you're looking for a few hacks, just try those, try batching, try blocking, try some buffer, and maybe try theme days or half days if that's appropriate for you. How
And
about you, Kathryn?
I don't want the buffer to go unhighlighted. So a test of this is if you are like, oh, I'm just feel like I'm not getting anything done, even just a quick 5 minute, I do a quick 5 minute loop around the building sometimes and not enough. And all of a sudden my productivity goes up because I needed that mental break and I needed some brain space to add more into my head. So I think that buffer is more important than we think it is, and I have to remind myself to do it over and over again. But another little trick for that too is, let's say you have a time that says client calls, and you're like, "Ooh, I've been meaning to reach out to this person." Sometimes just that brain space to say, "Okay, I've got a spot to put that on my calendar," and you create that list within that calendar item. Then it's out of your head, because I think we spend more time than we think saying, "Oh, I can't forget to do that. Oh, I can't forget to do this." And if you have a spot for it, I think you actually end up being more productive because your brain isn't looping on the same thing again and again.
Great two examples. My wife is a master at this. If anyone's looking to hire an executive assistant, Lori's the prototype. She uses just what you described. She takes every thought like that captive and puts it into her calendar, into a space that allows her to execute on it later. So it's a place to keep it out of her head onto a calendar, and then at a later date she'll massage that into its proper place in the calendar in order to get done. Um, but what about the world that we live in? I mean, as much as we're digital, as much as everything is a portal, you upload a PDF. That's the world we live in. Somehow, some way, we still have paper. We still have files. There's still a physical nature to some of what we do. Um, have you found any productivity hacks for the paper side of your business, the old analog version of productivity? Love to hear any input you have on that.
So I've recently picked up Remarkable, which I do like. I still actually need to learn it even more, but that has helped me because
Mhm.
I used to have stuff in like 4 different places and I could never find anything. So I can keep everything in there, my journal, my notes, my conference notes, all that. So it's all in one place. So I always have it. But another, so that's kind of avoiding paper, maybe let's call that. Another category is I really try to get paper off my desk as quickly as possible. So like right now I'm teaching a class and I have some paper for that because I have to bring notes. So as soon as I'm done with that class, it goes in the file system so that I have it if I need to reference down the road, but it doesn't sit on my desk. It's off. And the only paper that will be here is stuff for the next class. So it's ready to go. But the less paper I have around me, the better I feel. So I try to just do that really one touch and gone. One touch and gone is one of my favorite methods.
So when I walk into an office, let's say today I'm going to meet with someone live at their office and I walk in, I often find something that resembles an old school inbox, right? This is the place where paper comes in, but it hasn't yet been fully figured out. We're still somewhere in the process. And for some people, sounds like you're capable as your goal is to get that off your desk as quickly as possible. But let's be fair, there may be somebody listening who's like, yeah, that sounds really nice. That's not how my brain works. And I tend to procrastinate. I tend to let that pile up. And before I know it, that thing has become a monster and I don't even remember what's in it. Um, one of the things I found that's really helpful is creating a day. This goes back to your time block, creating a day of the week where your only goal is to empty the inbox. And so by empty it, this is a sorting technique. So go back to that Eisenhower matrix and maybe sort into 4 piles. This is important and it's urgent. This is important, but it's not as urgent. This feels urgent because they said, call now, but I don't think it's that important. And then this is clearly not that urgent, not important. That filing system works just as well for your physical papers as it does for your digital. And it may give you the relief you need once a week to know, okay, I may not know how to handle that like Kathryn does on a daily basis, where it comes in and I just get it off my desk. But I have a date in my calendar in which I know that's the purpose of that 30-minute window or 45-minute window if you need it, is I'm going to sort all of that so that I can attack the things that really are urgent and important, and I can delegate and I can delete or I can file for later. That system works just as well for paper as it does for your inbox digitally.
Oh, I love that. I used to have a lot more paper in my life, and I'm kind of glad our industry basically is paperless. It's actually been a relief of my brain.
It's taken
So
us a little while to get there, but we're
I
getting
know,
close.
I
Hey,
know,
listen,
absolutely.
I feel like this episode has a lot of other trails we could go down because really we've just done a broad overview of productivity and we've given a few hints at some things that you and I both have experienced and like. But my guess is our audience would say, yeah, but what about this? What about that? I want to invite our listeners to remember that participating in these episodes is possible on our YouTube channel where you can create comments and we can engage. So we want to welcome you if you're listening on audio only to check us out on our at Building Bigger Lives YouTube channel, where you might be able to add your comments and we'd be happy to engage with those. So if there are some things you'd like us to dig deeper into or expand upon on a future episode, please let us know. I'm I'm guessing we all have our favorite productivity hacks. I'd love to hear some of yours. Kathryn, sounds like one of the best ones you've seen in the last few years is Remarkable. So that might be a fun one to even expand upon as you learn how to use that tool. I have one as well. And that might be a tool that we could really help people with, because it is an interesting hybrid between digital and paper, and might allow some of our listeners to find a new pathway to be more productive. Any closing thoughts on today's episode? And if so, let me know where you think we need to go next.
So the other thing I try to do is, if there are some things I can do at the same time, and I know that multitasking can be bad, but for example, listening to this podcast on a drive that I knew I was going to have, I kind of batched that together and listened to 3 episodes at once. So there are times that it's like, okay, that's going to be my time to do this. And sometimes it's searching for what else can I do during that time that will help me be productive in a time that I might not call productive because I'm in the car. So just know that you can sometimes reach and do things in groups to help you open up your day a little bit more.
I think we definitely have to unpack batching. That's you just got me excited to talk more, but I know for today we need to tie this episode down. So folks, thanks for joining us. There's so much more that we can learn. That's why Building Bigger Lives is here. We want to take the opportunity to unpack some of these things that we're all familiar with if we've been in real estate sales or mortgage lending over the last 20 years. We've heard a lot of these great things, but maybe we haven't had the opportunity to really dig into them, because most people talk about them from a stage or they write a book, and we want to be able to interact with them. So please like, subscribe, and share what we've got here today, and make sure that if you have comments, you participate on our channel, because that's our way of really taking these and just, let's demystify them a little bit, and let's just get into the practical applications of productivity. Thanks for joining us on today's episode. We'll be recording every week and looking forward to joining you on next week's episode. We drop every Wednesday on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for joining us. For Kathryn Peterson, I'm Michael Regan, and we're building bigger lives.
This is Building Bigger Lives. Look for podcasts regularly on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Instagram at Building Bigger Lives. Thank you for listening. We are so appreciative of your support. This episode was edited and produced by Scott Higby at Studio C. Support also provided by Building Champions.